design. This place and time, that I might seek and find my God, my God.
Hallelujah. Anybody else got anything they want to talk about tonight? Well, I do. You know, about 14 years ago, anybody remember what they were doing 14 years ago? I mean, on this day, 14 years ago. July 27th. 14 years ago? I mean, if I said July 27th 1 year ago, you probably wouldn't know, would you? And I wouldn't either 1 year ago. But there are times in your life that you remember what's going on. And 14 years ago on this day, by this time I was sitting on about the 10th floor of the Oklahoma County Jail. But earlier that day, I was down the street about 30th and May at a check cashing place trying to cash some stolen checks. He looks up at me, "What?" And I stood there too long. Because when I turned to walk out that door, the police came from everywhere. Huh? Oh, yeah. They had guns first, over the hood of a car. But you know, that was, speaking of bad things that happened, that was the beginning, that was the end of my life up to then. I was a drug addict, I was an IV drug user. You know, slinging dope all over the city, night and day. Had graduated on up to shooting heroin, which I always said I would never do. But at that point, I wasn't doing that all the time. I was there where I was starting to do it, which was a really good time to get busted before you get way off into that kind of stuff. But that was the last time I got arrested, 14 years ago today. Been clean and sober 14 years ago today. And you know, I didn't even think about that till I was making a deposit at the bank today. And that's when I thought about what day that it was. No. Yeah, I was making a deposit. I wasn't trying to make no withdrawals. But, you know, because of that, you know, prison ain't always a bad thing. You know? Now, I look back and I don't want to go back to prison, or even before I actually went to a physical prison, I was still in a prison. I was locked up, I was bound up to drugs and that lifestyle. Probably more so to that lifestyle than the drugs itself, because like so many people I know, once you get arrested and you're in jail, you're not fiending for the drugs so bad. I mean, I never was freaking out because I didn't have a drug. It was just, you know, I just become accustomed to that lifestyle for so long that that's all, pretty much all I ever thought about doing was going out and seeing what I was going to do to get some more dope. And the dope was just to make money to buy more dope. I mean, you know, that was the deal. It wasn't that I was, and I was shooting dope and everything else, but I wasn't so much an addict that it was the lifestyle. Is what I'm trying to say. More than anything, it was just a do-nothing, roam around, con and conniving lifestyle that develops through years of drug addiction and alcohol. You know, doing drugs and getting in that lifestyle, and so the policeman that arrested me was a big old black guy. Big man, his arms was huge. They got me outside, and they brought me right back in to the check cashing place, and I was wearing a pair of shorts similar to these. And he just set me back down in there, and he sat down in a chair right there, and he just started talking to me. And at that time, I was 35 years old. I'll be 50 in October, this coming October. And he just looked at me and just said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? do you have any kids? I'm like, yeah, I have a daughter. What are you doing with yourself? Why are you doing this? You know, and then back then you had pagers, so I had a pager in my pocket and this thing's going off. And I had dope in my pocket. They hadn't got that yet. They got the stolen checks that I stole the day before in Yukon, but out of a truck. But they hadn't got to the dope yet, and I'm sitting there going, oh, man. And finally that thing goes off enough. Finally they get in my pocket, and they get the dope. So it's another charge, you know. But, you know, he just kept looking at me. Big old black guy, just as nice as he could be, policeman. Just kept looking at me, asking me, what are you doing? What are you going to do with yourself? And, you know, I didn't really have an answer for him. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I'd already been arrested several times. I had bond out on me in 2 counties. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Matter of fact, I had lost all hope at that time. He took me, put me in the car, and he took me downtown. He was talking to me about all the stuff he does. He's a volunteer football coach and works with underprivileged kids and that type of thing, you know. And I really thought that was pretty cool. And he took me down there, and, you know, and I ended up on the 10th floor up there about 12 hours later. But I had about 30 days. About 30 days later, after I was sitting in that jail cell with another old boy, thinking about, well, what am I going to do? And all kinds of thoughts go through your mind. Thoughts of just doing yourself in. Hey, nobody cares anyway, right? Could do that. I never really ever had much thoughts like that, but the thought crossed my mind is just like, you know, who cares? Nobody cares. You done ruined your family, so you don't really think they care, even though they really do, but you don't think they do. They just don't care to have you around because all you do is take advantage of them. And so I sat there day after day for 30 days and wasn't really craving no drugs or nothing. I just knew I'd go, once the word got out that I got busted again, some people that were carrying the bond on me, they would call their bondsman and tell them to drop the bond. So my bond kept going up. Because every time they dropped the bond, well, then that bond would come back on me, and it just kept going up, you know, to thousands and thousands of dollars from all these different times I was arrested. I'm like, man, you know, you just feel you don't know what you're going to do. You know you ain't going nowhere. And, you know, you're up there with a bunch of people that everybody's got a story. And most of them tell you they didn't do it, whatever it was at that time, whatever they were in there for. But I always knew I never got in trouble for anything that I didn't do. They got me not every time I did something, but when they got me, they got me. I mean, it wasn't no mistake, okay? It wasn't that I wasn't doing whatever they got me for and probably a whole lot more. But, you know, it's just day after day up there just thinking and wondering, what the heck am I going to do? And so I come to this point where I thought, you know what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put in to see the chaplain. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to find out if they know where a drug treatment is. And then I'm going to see if they'll let me get out and go to this drug treatment so I won't have to go to prison. That's all. I got this big plan, right? And so I put in to see the chaplain and sure did that for about 2 weeks. Nobody ever came. Finally, they took me over to the courthouse to go to court one day. It wasn't even my day to go to court. It was just a mistake. They took me over there. So, you know, in the county jail, you stay up all night and you sleep all day. It's just, I don't know why. That's just what you do. And every time I've been in there, we always stayed up all night and we slept all day. But while I was at the county jail, so I'd been up all night. They came and got me real early in the morning, so I hadn't had no sleep. Had to go sit over there, never went to court. Finally brought me back that day. And man, I was tired, and the next morning after being up night and day in there, chaplain volunteers showed up. And the guard knocked on the door, and he said, chaplain volunteers here to see you. And I said, I don't want to see him. I'm too tired. And, they don't care. Just shut the door and went on. And, man, I'll tell you, about the time I said that, about the time he walked away, I had a super conviction come over me, like, what did I just do? What did I just do? I just turned the one thing only hope I had was in that, what I thought I was going to get done in that conversation, and I turned them away. So as soon as we got out, I went right back out and put another note in to go to the chaplain, and the very next day they came back. Don't know if it's the same people or not, but the very next day they came back. Next morning and said, chaplain volunteers here to see you. And at that time they'd come and get you, and they'd take you out of the cell, and you could go in another room with them. And I went off in another room with them. Their name was a couple old guys named Carl and Buddy. And Carl and Buddy's from Highland Hills Baptist Church out there off Northwest Highway and Council. And I began to tell them what I was needing, and I was needing to go to drug rehab. And did they know where one was that I could go to? And they just kept looking at me going, no, you don't need drug rehab. What you need is Jesus. And they began to tell me their story about smoking and this or that and the other. And I'm like, wow. It's not really much of a story, but, But they kept ministering to me and ministering to me and ministering to me. We'd been in there. I mean, this was a small little room. We'd been in there a little while. And finally it came down to this, man. They just come down and they said, hey, is there any reason why you can't ask Jesus into your heart today? And I'm like, wow, see, because I had went to a Christian school for 4 years. I mean, I knew about Jesus. I mean, I guarantee you I knew what Christmas was and what Easter was. In 4 years of going to school, I knew that much. And I'm like, I never really heard about being born again. I mean, I just never heard that. And so I said, no, there's no reason why I can't. So we took hands and we all got on our knees. And they led me through the prayer, and I prayed that prayer. And I was all crying and boo-hooing. But at that time, it just felt like, boom, the weight of the world just went off me. I had so much guilt, so much condemnation on me. Mainly just from myself, just because I knew I was a sorry dad. And I knew I was a sorry son and a sorry brother and all these things that I was. I mean, I just was because of that lifestyle. And, man, when I come out of there, I was a different person. And I went back to that cell, and I had me a New Testament Bibles, all was in there, kind of tore up. And that's all I did. I just started reading that, reading that, reading that, reading that. And the stories were kind of familiar because, I'd heard the stories. I just never paid no attention to much. And so here, 14 years later, I've been out of prison since 2002, a little over 10 years. I got out in April of 2002. And, man, what a difference it makes. And I know there's a lot of people that go to prison and they get out, and, man, they don't hang with what they know, what got them through prison. They get that word and they'll hang with it. But they get out, and sometimes little things just like he went through, just because they couldn't pass the test, and maybe it was all their fault. And it just doesn't, it's really not a big thing, but because all this other stuff is going on, it seems to be such a great bigger thing. You know what I mean? And there's always tomorrow, and you can always take another test, and you can always stumble, and you're going to fall, and you're always going to do that through your life. It doesn't matter who you are. Nobody does this perfect. There ain't but one did it perfect. And that's, God's mercies are new on you every day. You stumble, get back up. If you've got 14 years of sobriety underneath it, if you went out and lost it tomorrow, doesn't mean you lose 14 years. It means you just went out and messed up. And you just get back up. And you just get going again. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says to you, or what kind of condemnation can be coming through you from the enemy or your own mind or whatever. You just get back up, whatever you've done, you get right with God, and you just keep on going, and you just keep on going. And I've had 14 years of all kinds of things that could set me back. You know, it ain't always just been smooth sailing. You know, there's all kinds of temptations out there for me, just like there are for you. It all has to do with how long do you dwell on that temptation. How long do you sit there and look at it and ponder on it and think on it? Because, you know, that's where it gets the people. That's where it gets the guys. When they get it in their head and they can't cast that down and bring that thought captive, but you let it dwell on the whatever it is, the beer or the girl or the porn or the whatever it is in your life, the friends that are doing drugs, and then, you talk to them here and there, and then, you just think, well, I can go do it. I can go sit in a bar and not drink, or I can go do whatever. But it's however long you let that stuff and you meditate on that in your mind. Because eventually, if you don't pull those thoughts down, Eustace said it a while ago. He said, if you go sit in a barber shop long enough, you're going to get a haircut, okay? You go sit in a bar long enough, you're going to start drinking again. You run around with the druggies long enough, you're going to end up drugging again. Now, that's one thing to pop in and out of somebody's life, okay? Come in with the good news, get out. It's a whole other thing to plop down in the middle of the dope house and think you're going to get them saved day after day. Hallelujah. But after all this time, and in 14 years is a drop in the bucket. I lived 35 the other way. So I haven't even half as long the right way as I had the wrong way. And even though I say the right way, I haven't always been right. I haven't always lived it up to a standard that could be. That's the cool thing about grace, because none of us do that. But the cool thing is, that you can do it. That's why I like testimonies, because you can hear somebody's testimony. You can hear my testimony or Mike's testimony. Any one of you guys' testimony could give hope to the next person. Because I can assure you, when I was setting that check cashing place at 30th in May, 27th in May, somewhere in there, 14 years ago today, I was hopeless. In my mind, you're never hopeless, okay? Jesus is the hope of the world. You know what I'm saying? But in your mind, you'll have self-limiting. You can limit yourself to where you can go. And you can begin to think that you can't. You can begin to think, I've got 13 felonies. And you can begin to think, those 13 felonies, that you can't get a job, or you can't ever, you don't let that get in your head. If you've got trouble with the law and felonies and all that, don't let that limit you from going out and still going out and seeking that job and going after it. Because eventually you'll find that place. Eventually you'll get there. And it may not always be that job you want to start with, but you keep going and you keep going. And whatever it is in life, you just keep going and keep going and keep going. Don't let self-condemnation or the condemnation from the enemy or anyone else stop you. Because, I'm living proof that it can be done. I ain't no further along than, anybody else. I mean, God's no respecter of persons. If the word works for me, it works for you. And that's one of the key ingredients to it all. Is whatever you're doing that's working for you now, if you're in a church somewhere, if you're in a ministry somewhere, stick with that. Don't just because you get to a certain point think I can just cut loose. You see, because that's where they always tend to fall. See it, and of course we don't have many here tonight, but we've had this place half full of people and all that, and seen lots of guys go on and do good. But, also we've seen so many that they just stray away. And because they get disconnected to what's got them to where they're at, and they can be in here doing so good, hooping and hollering, yay, Jesus, and all this. And, within just a couple of months or shorter, they can be right back in the middle of that stuff on their way back to prison or worse. Prison's not always the worst. You can be laying somewhere, OD'd, not dead, but your mind can be messed up the rest of your life, stroked out or something, just from doing too much dope. So prison's not always the worst thing that can happen. Although in my mind, every time I go pick guys up, just like I just went and got him at the halfway house, or I go out to the federal prison out there and see Dave, or I go to the Carver Center, it's like, why would anybody let this happen to them again? After they've been through it, why would you even have a thought about going in that direction anymore after going through all that? And I just sit out there at that federal prison, and I just look around, and it just brings back memory after memory of being in those places for about 4 years, and it's like, and I can hear the guys talking around, and some of the conversations, you're like, I don't know how long that one's going to last when it gets out. But, it's Jesus is the key to it all. And if you can just remember that, stay hooked up to the church, stay hooked up in the Bible, and God will take you through whatever it is. Even if you stumble, it doesn't matter. You just get back up. No matter what anybody's ever told you in your life that you can't make it and you're just a mess up and you've always been worthless or whatever. That's not true. That's not true. You can pick up the pieces and you can go on. And you can go on to be a success in whatever success is in your life.
Lord, I want to yearn for you. I want to burn with passion over you. And so